to operating system class. So we have just provoked the importance of memory management in our earlier class. So in extension to this, we will be talking about the memory management concepts such as background, such as swapping, continuous allocations, uh, segmentation, paging, structure of a page table, demand paging, copy on write, page replacement, allocation frames, and trashing, etc. See, these are the four most important towards the memory management what we are going to address. So before we dig deep into the memory management, so first of all, when we are going to call it as a memory, then we assume that there will be of a random access memory, and it is another one was a read-only memory. So as far as random access memory is going to be concerned, people will be extending it as some static RAM, nor they are going to call it as dynamic RAM, and followed by dual SDRAM, synchronous dynamic RAM, and DDR RAM, dual double rate RAM. So these elements we are going to call them as a random access memory, and these are going to be called it as a these are going to be called it as some volatile memory. So as far as volatile is going to be concerned, we can assume that if there is a power loss, so obviously the data is going to be lost. If there is no power loss, then we can say, then we are going to call it as a non-volatile there. So in this scenario, the second one will be the read-only memory. So in read-only memory, we are going to call it as a read-only memory, that we are going to call it as masked content. Another we are going to call it as programmable read-only memory. Later on we are going to call it as erasable programmable read-only memory. And finally the other step will be the electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. So when these we are going to call it as a non-volatile. So even though there is a power loss, then the data will be static, they can't be erased, and therefore we are going to call here as this one. So now the still extension towards this memory hierarchy will be one we are going to call it as a registers. Thereby we do have a cache memory. Then we are going to have another word called as a main memory. The other names what a main memory, we can call it as primary memory, some people will call, and some people they will be calling it as real memory, and another people they are going to call it as a random access memory. So these are the various nicknames of the main memory. Okay. Then we are going to have the fourth category as secondary memory. So again, secondary memory, it can be some hard disk. Then we are going to call it can be some magnetic disk nor magnetic tape. Nowadays we do have the flash disk, that is what we are going to call it as pen drive. So these they are going to call it as some external storage. These elements we are going to call it as an external storage with a CD or a DVD, etc. So these we are going to call it as an external storage. So this is what people are looking into the hierarchy of a memory. That means the first one will be registers, and it is going to be followed by the cache memory. Then we do have the main memory, and fourth one we are going to have the secondary memory. So as far as memory management unit is going to be concerned, memory management unit will take up one called as random access memories, another they will be taking it up as read-only memories. So in random access memory, we call it as static RAM, dynamic RAM, synchronous dynamic RAM, dual double rate RAM. And similarly, when we are going to call it as a read-only memory, so that can be masked read-only memory, programmable read-only memory, electrically programmable read-only memory, and electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. So these, they are going to give up the registers. They work with cache memory, followed by the memory that it is going to be called it as main memory. That is what people are going to call it as primary memory, real memory, or random access memory. And fourth one will be this secondary memory, etc. Fine. Now let us work with this content. Let us work with this content. So we do have some address space. We do have some address space, and this address space, it is going to be migrated into two words. One, we are going to call it as a physical address space, and second one will be the logical address. So as far as address space is going to be concerned, it is going to be bifurcated into two parts. One, we are going to be call it as logical address space. Another, we are going to call it as physical address space. Logical address space are going to be taken up with the CPU. Physical addresses are going to be taken up with the MMU. The MMU word, we are going to call it as memory management unit. Got it? So address space is now divided into two types. First address space, we are going to call it as logical address space, which it is going to be raised by the CPU. And second one, we are going to call it as physical address space. And this physical address space is going to be raised by the memory management unit. And now this memory management unit, now it is going to work with the physical addresses. Obviously, now what it is going to do with the operating system is, now operating system, it is going to convert the logical address with the physical address. Operating system, it is going to convert the logical address into the physical address. So the other name for this logical address, we are going to call here as virtual addresses. The other name of a logical address, we are going to assume it as virtual addresses. So this is the background what we are going to work it out. Fine. Now I was talking about registers. Then these registers, we are going to call it as some temporary storage. Thereby we are going to have a cache memory, and this cache memory, it is going to be some high speed memory, which it is going to work more faster than the random access memory, but it is going to have low capacity of memory, but it is going to work fast. It is going to work fast than the random access memory. So that was the advantage of what this cache is going to be taken up. So now we do have some memory which it is going to take up the CPU cycles, and thereby it is going to work with the data what it has to be processed, and that process it can do via request, that it is going to be taken up with the data read request or data write request. So it is going to be followed with either a read operation, or it is going to be worked out with a write operation. So the two operations, finally what people are going to take up with this memory management will be the read operation, and it is going to be the write operation. So here you can see the definition of a cache memory. It is going to be between the main memory and the CPU. So I do have first one as some registers, and then we do have some cache memory, and then we are going to have the random access memory, or we are going to call it as main memory. Then we do have the next architecture will be the secondary memory, So secondary memory, we are going to call it as C drive, D drive, E drive, pen drive, whatever you call. So that we are going to call it as secondary memory. So data will move from secondary memory to random access memory, then by to the cache memory, and thereby to the registers. And at this point, we have the central processing unit. So right from memory organization, right from cache memory, right from main memory, everything is going to be controlled by the memory unit. That is what we are going to call it as a main memory unit. So this is what we are going to call it as MMU. MMU stands for main memory unit. So that it is going to convert these addresses. This is going to convert the addresses of CPUs to the registers, etc. Fine. So now let us look into the some key concepts what the registers are going to address towards a program. So assume that there is a memory address space and we do have some memory here that we are going to call it as a primary memory, and primary memory we are going to call it as some random access memory. So in the first case, the low order bits of the things are going to be stored by the operating system. So now we can say this is process P1, process P2 and process P3. There are three processes. So process 1, it is going to have the starting address. So it is going to have the starting address. It is going to have a start and it is going to have an end at 3 like this. And similarly, P2, it is going to start at some 3 lakhs 40 and end at 4 lakhs for 920. And similarly, process P3, it is going to start up with 4 lakh 20 to 9 lakh 40 and with some 8 lakh 82 the things. And this is what we are going to call here as some free space. This is what we are going to call here as some free space here. Yeah, so the free space mechanism, when a new process is going to come into picture, the data it is going to be allocated into the free space. So free space is nothing but when it is already going to give some accommodation for process P1, P2, P3 and assume process P4 is going to come. Yeah, the new process is going to be allocated right from 8 lakhs 80,000 to 10 lakh 20,000 memory locations. Got it? Okay, now let us look at this juncture here. The starting address of a program, the starting address of a program is going to be stored in the base register. It is going to be stored into the base register, and that is what the program address, starting address is some 3 lakhs. So that is, it is going to store up. And the number of memory locations, that is number of memory locations program occupied, the program is going to occupy, that total number of memory locations is going to be stored into the limit register. So there is a contradiction, right? What is this 4 lakhs? So I can say 4 lakhs 20,940 is the ending address of the register. So this is a starting address and this is the ending address. And now we are going to subtract the 3 lakhs 40 here. So we do have 00 and this is 9 and this is 0. So we do have 1,20,900. So that is what we are going to write. So limit register we are going to call, or we can say it is bound register. So limit register, the other name for a limit register, people in some textbooks, they are going to call it as some bound register. So we do have this situation here. So this is the starting address of a program, 3 lakh 40, sorry, this is the ending address of the program, and 3 lakhs was the starting address of the program. Now you are going to make a difference operation, and that difference operation, it is going to give number of locations the program has occupied, and that value it is going to be stored into the limit register. So now we talked about base register, we talked about limit register, and how this it is going to give some protection to the mechanism. So protection where the data is going to be given. So here we are going to assume it as a memory. So that is nothing but a random access memory, or we can call it as some primary memory. We can call this one as some primary memory, or we are going to call it as some we are going to call here as a main memory, whatever people call that, which is fine here. So one we can call it as random access memory, another we can call it as primary memory, or we are going to call here as some main memory. So now you can see here the CPU is going to assign some addresses, and that addresses, whatever it is going to calculate, It is going to be between some base register to the limit register. If it is going to be within range, yeah, address is found. If it is not found, then it is going to raise some error. So that error we are going to call it as some software error, and software error, other name we are going to call it as an interrupt, and software error we call it as some trap here. So now let us work with simple example, thereby you understand more clearly. Assume is going to program is going to start at 100 and it is going to spread up to 275. So it is going to spread up to 275. So now what I can show, this 100 is going to be the base register, and now I have to put a limit register. How I can put a limit register? I can say that I can use the starting address, that it is going to be first I can take the ending address, that is 275. Then I am going to take the starting address, that is 100. Now I am going to make a subtraction operation, so I get 175. So this 175 is going to be part of the limit register. So it is going to give total number of instructions, or the number of lines the program is going to occupy. Fine. Assume I want to go to 150. That I want to move to the address, that the CPU wants an address of 150. So how it is going to calculate? So 150 is equals to 100 plus 50. So this 100, what is this? We are going to call it as base register. And what is this 50? 50 we are going to call it as displacement, or we can say it as an offset here. So now this 50, it should be less than or equals to 175. And what this 150, what it is going to rise means, this 175 is the maximum limit what it is going to occupy, and it should be less than or equals to 150. So that means the thing was, it whatever 150 locations it is going to rise, that should be less than 150. So that is what we are going to assume, whether it is a no case or whether it is a yes case here. So if it is between base register and if it is between limit register, yes, we can say the data can be found in the memory. So whatever CPU is searching, now we can say 150 can be found in memory. 150 can be found in memory. Assume I want to go to the address of 200. 200 is equals to some 150 plus 150 plus 50. Now 50 I am going to call it as offset, and 100 plus 100. So 100 I am going to call it as some base register. So obviously 200 is not less than or equals to 175. So it is going to move to an error called as trap. So it is going to move to an error called as trap. So 200 cannot be found in memory. Got it? So in first case I have taken base register and I have added the displacement, and if it is in the range, yeah, I am promoting it to the memory location. If it is not in the range, then I can say it can't be found. The program address what you have given to me was wrong, so you have to search in some other space. So that is how a trap is going to be taken up. So while working with this elements, the people, they are going to have the few concepts of binding elements, and that binding we have to have a good discussion. So first one we are going to call it as some address binding. So the number of locations which are reserved for the things which are reserved for program. So the things reserved memory locations, the reserved memory locations which are given to the program, we are going to say the addresses are going to be binded. So as far as binding is going to be concerned, now it is going to be of two types. One we are going to call it as static binding, and two we are going to call it as dynamic binding. Static binding, it is going to be done via the compile time, where dynamic binding, it is going to be taken up during runtime, or you are going to call it as using execution time. Got it? So address binding is going to be says that the memory allocation is going to be done at the compile time. Memory allocation is going to be taken up at the runtime. So if this is memory allocation, so memory allocation is done at compile time, and here memory execution is done at runtime. So memory allocation is going to be run at runtime. So I can say examples, the functions what in C, we are going to say it is compile time. Macros in C, they are going to be called whenever you link a macro, right? So you have a definition of what is the function, what is a macro. So function, the memory locations are going to be given in advance, and similarly as far as macro is going to be concerned, whenever the macro call has been done, then only the macro is going to be called. That means macro is going to be done at runtime, whereas the functions what we write in C program using for loop, if loop, etc., those they are going to be done at the compile time. Similarly, in object-oriented programming also, we have a class which is going to be an abstract, and once an object, when we are going to create a class, and that class is not going to be given any memory. So it is just a virtual aspect there. Once an object is going to be created to that class, at that time only memory is going to be given. That is where we are going to say a dynamic binding, a dynamic establishment of memory is going to be allocated at that structure. So the first thing, we were going to be call it as some address binding. It is going to have some static binding. It is going to have some dynamic binding. So in static binding, the example was it is going to be done at compile time, whereas dynamic binding, it is going to be done at runtime. So the best example for a compile time will be the things which are going to be done at functions. And similarly, the best example for a runtime or an execution time, it is going to be done at a compile time. Okay. So operating system, it is going to have some system programs. It is going to have some system programs, and these system programs are basically, it is going to be classified as compiler. Second one was interpreter, and third thing was linker, and fourth one was loader. So one we are going to call it as compiler, another we are going to call it as interpreter, third we are going to call it as linker, and fourth one we are going to call it as loader. Okay. So now either a compiler nor a interpreter, either a compiler nor a interpreter, whatever they are going to do, they are going to convert the source code. They are going to convert the source code to object code. They are going to convert the source code to an object code. So I am going to have a program called as swap.c. Now it is going to be converted as .obj. Later on it is going to be converted to swap.exe, right? Similarly, I am going to have some swap.java, and it is going to be converted to swap.class. That is, a bytecode is going to be generated. From that it is going to be converted to exe, right? At this process we are going to have a compiler, and at this from class code to exe code we are going to have an interpreter towards the Java application, where we do have a Java virtual machine. So that is the second concept what a Java is going to be provoking. So we have a source code, it is going to be converted to an object code, that it is going to be taken up by the compiler or an interpreter. As far as an example towards a compilation, swap.c is a program which it is going to be converted to obj, and thereby it is going to be converted when execution is going to be done, and when run is going to happen, then it is converted to swap.exe. Similarly, we have swap.java, and it is going to be converted to a class code. So we get a swap.class. So at that phase, swap.java is going to be called it as source code, and swap.class is going to be called it as object code. So the second part, we have an interpreter, and interpreter is going to convert this byte code. Interpreter is going to convert this byte code. Now this byte code is converted to a exe that it is going to be taken by a compiler. So the first part is going to be a compilation, and second part is going to be called it as interpretation. So one we have a compiler, another we have an interpreter. That is where a Java virtual machine is going to come into picture. So this is all regarding the address binding. This is all regarding the address binding. So we talked about a compiler, we talked about interpreter, then we have to talk now here as a loader, and now we do have to talk about a linker. Now we have to talk about a loader, then we have to talk about a linker. So let us take another word called as linker, and we are going to call it as loader. Okay. So now I am going to say hash include some stdio.h. Then I am going to say hash include conio.h, console input io.header file, standard input output header file. Then I am going to write my main program here, and then I am going to say some a is equals to b, temp is equals to some a, and then I am going to say a is equals to temp. So now I am going to do all these aspects, and thereby I am going to close this program. Okay. Now I am going to say here some swap.c. So this is what I am going to call it as program, and this is the things I am going to call it as header files, and these header files has to be linked so that program will get executed. Then who is the person responsible for it? It is taken up with linker. That means linker, it is linking object modules. It is linking object modules. So linker is a program which it is going to link the object modules. So whatever object modules are going to be raised, those object modules are going to be linked up by the linker. So I have a software, and that software it is going to be linked up to the object module. So next example, I am going to say JAVAC Java, and then I am going to say swap.java. So what is going to happen here? So it is going to bring up a command, and it is going to make a link operation. So who is making that link operation? It is going to be done with the operation called as linker. So whatever object modules we are going to write, all those object modules are going to be linked up, and they are going to be joined to see that the program is going to be executed. Okay. Now in this program I am going to use modularity. If assume I am going to use a modular programming, then I am going to say it is modular programming, and I can say this is first module, this is second module, third module, and fourth module. There are 4 modules here, and this is subprogram 1, this is subprogram 1, subprogram 2, subprogram 3, and subprogram 4. So subprogram 1, subprogram 2, subprogram 3, and subprogram 4. And this is, assume it is called as main program, and this main program is titled as some arithmetic operations. So now what I have to do is I have to use a top-down approach, nor I have to use a bottom-up approach, and I have to execute my program. And that means module has to link module 1, it is going to link module 2, it is going to link module to the program. So how it is going to done? It is going to be done with some function call. It is going to be called it as function call. then you are going to have some function body. So this is what we are going to say. From the main program, we make a function call. I make a function call, and function body is going to be linked, and function body is going to be linked. So who is responsible for all these activities means the operating system is responsible to do this object or. Then who is the person doing in this operating system? It is going to be done with a linker. So linker, it is going to see that all the object modules what they are going to be raised, that it is going to be taken up. So fine, object modules are ready. Now what was the still pending operation here was, the still pending operation was, what is the thing a loader is going to do? What is the thing a loader is going to load? So loader, it is going to link up a load operation. It is going to link up a load operation. So it does some load operation. That means when a loader is going to load a program, so I have random access memory, then program to be loaded into memory. Program has to be loaded into memory, and it has to prepare for execution, and it has to prepare for execution. So I have object module 1, I have object module 1, object module 2, object module 3. So then I have main module. I have main module. So assign memory for object module 1, 2, 3 and main module, and prepare for execution, So the main objective of a loader was, it sees that whatever modules are there, those modules has to be brought into memory, so that they get executed. Then what is the purpose of a linker? It has to link object 1, it has to link object 2, it has to link object 3, and it has to link to the main program. So we talked about a compiler. Compiler, it is going to say that it is having some convert the source code to an object code. Then we talked about a byte code, where it is going to use a interpreter so that a byte code is going to be converted to an executable code. So we have static binding, we have dynamic binding, that we have talked about it. Then we have taken that there are some system programs which are going to be in control of an operating system, and these system programs, they have the separate setup. One we call it as a linker, another we are going to call it as a loader. So linker, it is going to link the object modules, whereas a loader, it is going to load the object modules and sees that the object modules are going to be executed. So binding comes into this picture at this time. So how much time the data is to be binded towards that memory location? So the original memory location, we are going to call it as absolute code. The changed or updated memory location is going to be called it as relocatable code. Okay, so assume your native place is some Vijayawada. Now you are staying in a hostel here. Now what people will call, you are going to be relocated. What is your proper place? What is your native place? I say Vijayawada. Now where are you? I am in Bhimvaram. That means you have moved from Vijayawada to Bhimvaram. So the place at this position, the current live location what you are going to share, that live location we are going to call here as a relocatable code or a relocatable address, exactly where you are. And the absolute address is the permanent location where you are going to take it up. So in general, the permanent locations are going to be preferred, and they are going to be taken up at the compile time, and the relocatable addresses, they are going to be handled over the load time, and thereby it is brought towards the execution. So we have enough discussion on towards all these steps. Now let us look into the second scenario, which we'll be taking up into the next class. So yeah, thank you for joining my class.